This year, a tree sponsored by the San Jose chapter of the Satanic Temple caused heads to turn after the discovery that its tree topper, a giant black goat head, had been stolen. Chapter members say a replacement is in the works.
Granted a Boca Raton middle school English teacher a permit to put up a display on Sanborn Square in downtown Boca. He chose to display a sculpture of a pentagram, which is a satanic symbol. There were protests, and someone even drove over a car with it. CBS 12's Mike Magnoli is live at City Hall tonight. And Mike, you just got word that display will not be making a comeback this year, correct?
You know, we sent 3 of the largest aircraft carriers in the world, and they're right now positioned. We have a nuclear submarine also positioned. We have many things happening that we hope, in fact, I'll go a step further. We hope to God we never have to use.
The president is not going to allow North Korea to have a nuclear weapon in their hands that can hit America with an ICBM that can make it to the United States. And if we have to go to war to stop this, we will. And if there's a war with North Korea, it'll be because North Korea brought it on itself. And we're headed toward a war if things don't change.
North Korea defied the United States today with another missile test, the first in 10 weeks, firing an intercontinental ballistic missile capable of reaching the U.S. Capitol. The launch comes 1 week after President Trump declared North Korea a state sponsor of terrorism and imposed new sanctions. North Korea defied the United States today with another missile test, the first in 10 weeks, firing an intercontinental ballistic missile capable of reaching the U.S. Capitol. The launch comes 1 week after President Trump declared North Korea a state sponsor of terrorism and imposed new sanctions. The North called that a serious provocation. Mr. Trump was briefed on the launch while the missile was in the air. He said, "We will take care of it." He did not say how. David Martin is at the Pentagon.
It was North Korea's third test of an ICBM. The other 2 took place this summer. And according to Defense Secretary Mattis, it went further.
It went higher, frankly, than any previous shot they've taken. It's a research and development effort on their part to continue building ballistic missiles that could threaten everywhere in the world, basically.
The missile was fired from a mobile launcher just north of the capital of Pyongyang and flew for more than 50 minutes, climbing more than 2,300 miles into space before splashing down in the Sea of Japan. Because it was fired at such a high angle, the missile was never a threat to the United States. But calculations done by David Wright of the Union of Concerned Scientists showed that had it been fired on a standard trajectory, it could have traveled 8,100 miles, far enough to reach Washington, D.C., or anywhere else in the U.S. Within minutes of the launch, South Korea conducted a missile firing drill of its own.
The South Koreans have fired some pinpoint missiles out into the water to make certain North Korea understands that they could be taken under fire by our ally.
Secretary of State Tillerson called for stricter enforcement of UN sanctions against North Korea, including the right to stop, board, and search vessels transporting goods to and from the North. Secretary Mattis called this latest test a research and development effort, which means North Korea still has more tests to conduct before it will have a reliable intercontinental ballistic missile. But that day is coming, Anthony.
Has launched a ballistic missile. The launch came at about 3 a.m. local time, just north of Pyongyang, the North Korean capital. It's an unusual time for a missile to be fired. Usually they are fired at dawn. We know that this missile went to the east, but right now the Pentagon and U.S. Pacific Command are analyzing the trajectory. We don't know if it was an ICBM, an intercontinental ballistic missile, but we can confirm with senior U.S. defense officials what the South Koreans have been reporting, that North Korea launched a ballistic missile not long ago, firing it to the east. Again, we don't know how far it flew and whether it was an ICBM or not. Harris.
Well, we waited for a few minutes for this confirmation, and I know that there are a couple of things that you say still we do not know, and that is the type of missile this is. But, Jennifer, this is not happening on a day in which there was no news with North Korea. I mean, this day started in the wee morning hours of reports, at least from Reuters, and now building upon different sources, in which North Korea says it's farther along in its nuclear program. The South Korean ministry saying, you know, it looks to be that that is the case.
Absolutely. In fact, the reports came from the South Korean reunification minister saying that within a year, North Korea would have completed its nuclear program. Remember, North Korea already has about 20 nukes. So it's not that they don't already have nuclear capability, but this is a new report from South Korea suggesting that within a year, the latest intelligence suggests that North Korea's nuclear program would be complete. This is obviously a worrisome time. There is a White House meeting slated. Defense Secretary Jim Mattis is supposed to be over at the White House this afternoon. That meeting was to be discussing budget issues. The president had invited him to sit in on that meeting with congressional leaders. It is clear now that they will have to address this latest provocation from Pyongyang.
All right. One of the new details that you brought us, and I'm asking our panel to sit by here. We have a gentleman with us today who worked for Senator Mitch McConnell, and no doubt this will come up on Capitol Hill now, so I'm going to ask you guys to stand by and get to this. I want to talk with you, though, Jennifer, about the timing. This happened in the middle of the day for Americans, so if they're trying to get our attention or the world's attention, it's not the overnight. And you mentioned the timing. Talk to me about it.
Well, it's interesting. Often what we have noticed is that Pyongyang will fire, particularly if it's an ICBM, at about 6 a.m. local time, Korean time. That ends up being about 6 p.m. here. We're 12 hours ahead on the East Coast of the United States. Again, it's hard to get into the mind of the leader of the North Korean regime. It's not clear at this point whether this was an ICBM, but certainly this ballistic missile, the first, as you mentioned, that has been fired since September 15th, it has gotten the attention of the U.S. military, and certainly the president will be briefed as soon as there is more information about how far this ballistic missile flew, whether it threatened any of the allies in the region.
On Action News tonight is a 4.1 magnitude earthquake right here in the Delaware Valley. The quake hit at 4:47 this afternoon with the epicenter 10 kilometers or 6.2 miles east-northeast of Dover, Delaware. We have had no reports of injury or damage, at least not to this moment, but we have heard from people feeling the quake from Washington, D.C. to Doylestown, Pennsylvania. Meteorologist Cecily Tynan has more on the quake.
And Jim, I felt it. I was getting ready for the 5 o'clock news sitting in the weather office, and it was about 20 seconds of kind of swaying. And my Facebook, my Twitter accounts lit up with people saying, did we just have an earthquake? And yes, we did. The epicenter was close to Dover, Delaware, but the seismic waves felt across the region, even as far as New England, far south as Washington, D.C., because this was a pretty shallow hurricane. Officially from the National USGS, it's a 4.1 earthquake. Did I call it a hurricane? Sorry, I'm thinking the end of hurricane season. It happened at 4:47. The epicenter was 6.2 miles east-northeast of Dover, 10K east-northeast of Dover, and it was an extremely shallow hurricane. It was only 5 miles below the surface. I said hurricane again. Earthquakes can be as low as 40 miles under the surface to still be considered a very shallow earthquake. It was the largest reported earthquake in Delaware in history. The last one, 1973, a 3.8 magnitude. Now, talking about magnitude, it's a logarithmic scale. So each level is 10 times stronger than the one before it. So 1 to 5 magnitude, it's felt, but damage is rare. You get to a 5 to 6 minimal damage, and then you get 6 and above. This is when it goes up to severe damage. The highest earthquake ever recorded, a 9.5. And these are all the reports. You see all those blue dots? These are the people who have felt the earthquake as far north as parts of Connecticut, New York State, as far south as Washington, D.C. But again, 4.1, minimal damage, just a lot of shaking.
Heads, and now it's gone. A holiday decoration put up by a group called the Satanic Temple of San Jose. This was on display at San Jose's popular Christmas in the Park. It's now been stolen, leading investigators to ask if this is a hate crime. NBC Bay Area's Damien Trujillo is in downtown San Jose for us with all the details. Damien.
Well, Raja, schools, churches, and community groups pay to decorate these trees here at Christmas in the Park in San Jose. It's a years-long tradition, a tradition the Satanic Temple of San Jose says it will be a part of. The tree sits in the middle of Christmas in the Park, not far from the nativity scene. A group called the Satanic Temple of San Jose decorated it with their own theme, and many park visitors don't like it. Not appropriate for Christmas?
I don't think it's appropriate for Christmas at all.
Kind of scary looking for kids. I don't think it's kid appropriate.
In fact, over the weekend, someone vandalized the tree, stealing the tree topper. Here's a picture of the tree topper on the Facebook page of the Satanic Temple of San Jose. Is it appropriate in a place like this?
Absolutely. We're part of a community.
This man with the Satanic Temple of San Jose was okay if we showed part of his face. He says the First Amendment gives his group every right to display its views in the park.
They can be offended if they want, but I mean, we have rights just like everyone else.
Christmas in the Park organizers agree.
Everybody has a right to voice their beliefs, and we don't necessarily concur with those beliefs in all cases, but we're here to provide a community event that's free and open to the public.
Event organizers say the displays are inclusionary, pointing to other trees next to the controversial one sponsored by different religions. This family points to the tree by the atheist community of San Jose, which they call appropriate. But as long as the tree by the Satanic Temple is up, the family says they'll avoid this area of the park. Several people have been stopping by asking where that tree is located. It's creating quite...
Thousands of visitors take in Christmas in the Park in San Jose. There's controversy brewing over a couple of trees on display and whether they're appropriate for this venue. ABC 7 News reporter Chris Wynn has more on the mixed reaction.
A time-honored tradition dating back decades. And with hundreds of trees at Christmas in the Park,
people should be able to say whatever they want to say within reason.
Schools, businesses, and organizations are able to bring awareness to causes they care about. But now some sponsors have been called on by community members to explain the appropriateness of their displays.
The world is what the world is, to each their own, and it's just something to talk about.
A tree sponsored by prominent San Jose home remodeling firm H2H Design and Build, focuses on current events including Colin Kaepernick as well as the Me Too movement. Yet some took issue with this scene, depicting the rise of the transgender community, featuring a Barbie doll in transition alongside a poster of Bruce Jenner in 1976. Designers are now altering the tree, hoping their message of acceptance isn't lost in translation.
For Christmas, you celebrate the birth of Christ and what he did for us. So, of course, their message cannot be of that.
New this year, a tree sponsored by the San Jose chapter of the Satanic Temple caused heads to turn after the discovery that its tree topper, a giant black goat head, had been stolen. Chapter members say a replacement is in the works.
Now people know who we are and what we believe, and there's nothing to be scared of. Just ask us a question. We're happy to talk to you. And I think that you'll find that we have more in common than we do different.
Event organizers say since they're on public land, they won't remove any trees unless there's a blatant attempt from the sponsor to be vulgar or discriminatory.
It's not our job to judge, it's to accept, and there are many different religions, there's many different organizations that participate.
This year, the city granted a Boca Raton middle school English teacher a permit to put up a display on Sanborn Square in downtown Boca. He chose to display a sculpture of a pentagram, which is a satanic symbol. There were protests, and someone even drove over a car with it. CBS 12's Mike Magnoli is live at City Hall tonight. And Mike, you just got word that display will not be making a comeback this year, correct?
John, this thing put Boca Raton on a roller coaster ride, and city leaders now telling us that a permit deadline was missed. That date is a deal breaker.
It's the sculpture that turned heads and made people's blood boil, the Devil's Star. Some people were so mad they called on the Palm Beach County School District to fire the man responsible for the sculpture. They protested outside the middle school where he teaches. Preston Smith, who's talked to me several times on the phone but declines to go on camera, tells me he had every intention of bringing the sculpture back this year. The city of Boca Raton even considered changing their ordinance to not allow any public displays on Sanborn Square, but that never passed. CBS 12 News confirms Preston Smith did not apply for a permit in time. There are 5 slots available on Sanborn Square. Here's the list of people who secured the permits. Smith is not one of them. But Scott Singer's name jumped off the list at us. He's a councilman, and I asked him if he got on this list to prevent Smith from getting a spot. Was your decision a countermeasure?
No. With all this discussion of free speech, I thought it was a perfect opportunity for me to tell the residents of Boca how much I love this city and how important I think the holidays are and how we should treat them all with respect.
All right. Trying to figure out if Preston Smith missed this deadline by accident or if he just wanted to give up this message, this mission, if you will, waiting to hear back from him. But if you come to Boca this season, you'll see the nativity scene, you'll see a menorah, but no Devil's Star. I'm Mike Magnoli, CBS 12 News.